I can't swim. Better said, I don't swim. By the time I took my first swimming class, I was a senior in high school and far too concerned about my pressing curl to risk submerging my head underwater in full abandon. It just wasn't going to happen. At best, I'd say I know water safety, just enough to wade in water no more than 4 feet high, and to sort of make my way underwater holding my breath across the width of a very modest pool. A pool, I said, because shifting sands and unexpected drops are not for me. So water and I have this complicated relationship. Bodies of water, even large fountains, can tend to make me nervous. As much as I am mesmerized by the ocean's expanse and beauty, I am equally, perhaps more so, terrified by its potential power. Ultimately, I am afraid. Years later, I tried again. Free of any angst about my hair, I discovered that I was still afraid. Fear walked with me to the pool at the Greenpoint Y and stayed quietly by my side until it was time to venture in to the deep end. Jump in, you're safe. That's what they said. But paralyzed by fear, I could not do it. My fear helped me craft a story that said it was too late for me to learn, that any effort would be met with failure, or worse, I'd drown. My complicated relationship with water continues. Thank God I have children that encourage me and continue to teach me little by little. I thought about that time and my swimming journey as I read today's gospel. I thought about the man who had been there for 38 years and how that single story of I can't, for whatever reason, had morphed into a crippling excuse, one that prevented him from experiencing the freedom he longed for. And I thought about myself. Could my fear of the water have been so deeply embedded that it operated as my excuse? Beside that man at that pool on that day when the water was stirring, could I have made that move, jump in, as it were, to get what I wanted or needed? That's where I begin with this text, with ears that remember and took to heart the motto, no excuses. But that's not where I'll end. Let's return to the stirring of the water, which alludes to verse 4 of John 5, but our gospel reading omits it. I'll share it here because I grew up hearing this text preached as if these words were an integral part for our understanding of it. It reads, "For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first, after the troubling of the water, stepped in, was made whole of whatsoever disease he had." Scholars believe this to be a later addition to the biblical text, likely added to explain the troubling of the water in verse 7. They omit it because the language doesn't connect with the rest of the text. But legend says that an angel would come to stir the water, that healing would in fact happen. People believed and came to this public space expecting a miracle. The elimination of this verse works. It centers Jesus, his role in the story. But today I'm struggling with this random and singular opportunity for healing. In a book of miracles and signs, I see this story as limited and competitive. Jesus offers unconditional healing through transformative encounter for one man, but I'm frustrated by the system that surrounds him. I'm teasing out a story of struggle and survival, the sacredness of bodies deemed worthless, bodies that are often overlooked. This story highlights the social and systemic problems that have left this man abandoned by a pool. Something is wrong with the system, folks. It reminds me of systems that have caused me harm. Times I've pushed back against institutions when policies landed on me in ways that were harmful and unjust. During these times, I knew myself as the victim of a system working exactly as it was designed to. I see that here and push further to wonder, how do we understand what it means to be lame, blind, or disabled? In the context of the many who have gathered at the gate, waiting for that singular opportunity for healing, why would there be only one such opportunity? Why would the system require that the neediest among us, the neediest, have to fight each other for it? So which is it? Is he a man stuck in his story? Because 38 years is a long time. That kind of time marinating in the sorrow of a situation can absolutely drain a person of hope, of belief that something different could be on the horizon. Is liberation from such long-term trauma even possible? What kind of agency or support would be needed? Is the real work in the power of words, the shift in perspective that elevates one mentally and emotionally? Or is it simply a flawed system he's fighting against, where no amount of positive thinking will change his circumstances? What might be done to set him and so many others free from that system that was designed to destroy them? So where is God in this story, and how can we glean something useful for our context, our world, and time? In the next few months, more and more of us will feel the crushing weight of these systems as they impact greater numbers of people. Our neighbors and friends, our families and communities. More of us will feel overwhelmed and pushed toward that gate. Having lost sight of a hopeful future, many of us will become numb, grow silent, be or experience a hypothetical paralysis, become emotionally or spiritually immobilized. Sherilyn Ifil, she's the president of the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, shares in her weekly newsletter how unprepared, ineffective, and increasingly unwilling our leadership has been to resist the wave of authoritarianism sweeping our nation. She warns us regular folks about the fatigue we're all experiencing, the stories and excuses that ultimately perpetuate narratives of doom and failure. Over time and from fatigue, we can, all of us, we can fall victim to the story of hopelessness. We've witnessed it these past few months as political and corporate leaders, institutions, and universities have fallen silent, have bowed to the pressure of our current administration. Unfortunately, as both old and new systems expand their reach, these next few months will be harder. So I share both sides of this coin, as it were, the excuse and the system, because in this instance, I'm not able to separate them. Sometimes it's an excuse that will hold you back, for sure, but sometimes it's the system. And quite often it's the system that creates the excuse. So that numbing and unseeing is real, and getting trapped by or in a system is its beginning. It can become your story. It can become your excuse. But let's return to the text, because I am determined to end with hope. Let's return to the question Jesus poses as he stands among the needy. Let's hear again that question: what do you want? Do you want to be made well? I have to remind myself that Jesus already knows why we haven't been able to make it to the pool. He knows that already. He also knows our reasons and excuses. What he wants is to help us shift from reliance on a constant focus on the struggle in front of us to the power of personal encounter with him. To let that be the motivation for whatever comes next. To let that be the energy that mobilizes our gathering, our each next prayerful and faithful step. It's that energy that helps us move from suffering to trust, and from trust to transformation, that deeper moral, ethical, and spiritual evolution to my something is wrong with the system, because something is. Jesus says, well, stand up, take your mat, and walk. I hear it as a command to the collective now. The future is us rising, working together as a people of faith, creating the world that we say we want to make. Earlier this week, I counted myself among a united group of believers at Columbus Circle for Multi-Faith Monday. Let me tell you, I felt a spark of life and knew the awakening of a part of myself that because of life's pace and this particular work that I do, that we all do, absolutely runs the risk of growing numb. If I am not careful, the constant pace with its very infrequent wins can impact my ability to see and dream, can dampen the fire of hope in me. And I call myself a hoper. Right? Walter Brueggemann uses that term, and I latched on to that. I'm a hoper. But it's subtle, so subtle, the wearing away of that only in reigniting it did I understand that it had already begun to fade. Gathering like that may be the antidote to combat fatigue, to that brutal sense of battle burnout. Can you imagine what might have happened if that kind of collective energy were ignited at that gate, at that pool, that day? How, instead of lack, we might have read a story of enough as the town officials gathered to support them with much needed resources. Good gracious, imagine that. I can't speak for the ways of angels, but I can imagine a scenario where, if not miraculously healed, all would have been helped. Bless God, all would have been helped. A different story for sure, a different system indeed. I'm working on being encouraged by more of this, so stay tuned for an invitation to join me one of these Mondays. In the meantime, if you see or hear about me in the water this summer, know that I'm working through some things, working through my fear and reminding myself of what Jesus said. In spite of and perhaps because of a system he knows to be broken, take up your mat and walk. The water may still unnerve me. It may always unnerve me. But I'm learning that the real stirring happens not in a pool of competition, but in the encounter with God, an encounter that tells us to stay focused and obedient to his command, which empowers us to step up and out into the community of faith, not in waiting for that singular moment of healing. No, no, no. But in the individual and then collective rising of a people who refuse to let fear or any kind of broken system define their story. Take up your mat and walk. Amen.